Hello and welcome to another Retro Crazy. I've already looked at this, which is my Thomson MO5 Michel Platini edition. It's working, it's running, it's doing what it should, but I've got more to look at. So I'm going to pop this to the side, and next we're going to look at the tape deck. So this needs to come apart, it needs a good clean, it's quite dusty and grubby. Oh, that's quite tight. Everything seems to do what it's supposed to, but we need to give it a good clean, and it is independently powered, so I'm going to have to get in here and probably replace some capacitors as well, just to make sure that this runs at its best. So let's crack on, get this apart and see where we go from there. And there we are, all apart. I can see, what's that, 5 caps and possibly another, 6 caps, can't see the most obvious one. It's going to need a good clean up. I'm going to need to find some belts, but this one is a nice simple one to find, or at least to remove, but look. And this is why you need to service them when they're kind of this old. That belt's dead. So definitely needs replaced. And on the other side, we can actually see the belt here for the tape counter, and again, nice simple one to remove, however also retaining its shape. So those need replaced. I'm going to give everything a clean because it's exceptionally grubby, re-grease everything, fit new belts, replace the caps, and at that point we can pop this back together. And yes, it wasn't without its dust bunnies. And there we are, back together and still doing, hopefully, what it's supposed to do. So let's power it on and see if it does anything when it's not connected to the computer. I can hear the transformer hum. And it's doing fast forward rewind, tape counter's working. LED's not lighting. Okay, give me a second while I double check. So I've double checked, there doesn't seem to be any power going to this, so it's maybe reliant on being connected to the computer, I don't know. I'm not too worried about the LED, I'd rather the tape deck works and it fast forwards, rewinds, and I've run a tape through it and that's fine. So that's great. So let's now pop this to the side and let's move on and have a look at the joysticks. So moving on to the controller adapter, which plugs into the back. Let's pop this open, and apparently this is a music and game module. Let's find out what's inside. And there we are. You can see it's a single circuit board. That's just to stop anything shorting against the connectors on the back. Lots of cables running from the front to the connectors for the back, and not a lot else. Some resistors, some caps, and a couple of ICs. So realistically, there's not a lot in here for me to touch. So I'm going to pop it back together. When it comes to connecting it, I'll run some deoxit onto the connectors and we'll run it in and out of the back of the machine. I've already cleaned up the connectors on the machine, so the deoxit is mostly for these contacts. Right, well, let's pop this back together. So with the joystick adapter checked, let's move on to the controllers. Now the controllers, unfortunately, they've been wrapped this way and the cables have reacted with the plastic, which is really annoying. All along here, on the underside, and quite badly on this section. Now what I am going to do is just take a knife across these, smooth them off. It's the best I can do. So with that done, it's not as bad on the hands. It's not great, but it's better than it was. So let's now crack this open, because this will need a good clean, as will the other one. And let's make sure everything inside is as it should be. So now we're in, we can see the design is fairly simple. It's actually a circuit board, one of these dual layer circuits, and it's got this just pushed onto it. It's so basic, I really don't want to put much strain on that, just in case. There's nothing obvious on the top, so what I'm guessing is when you're doing this, it's actually rocking on the underside and pushing into the corners. It is filthy. You can see the reaction on the plastic again from this. There's nothing that can be done about that. That's inside. It's always good to touch, but I can't get this to come off. And I think I need to release the pressure on this before potentially I can get this out, because there's no more screws and yeah, it's in there quite tight. Now I think this top should come off somehow. We've got a circlip, and that circlip would come up and off the top, which would allow all of this to come off. And we've got another circlip on the action button, and that just stops everything popping out that way. So I'm going to have to try and pop that out so I can get what is obviously a spring out, so this can get cleaned properly. So bear with me while I try not to break it and disassemble it fully. Well, I've been fighting with this for quite a while, and I've chipped a little bit of the bottom, which is quite annoying, but I cannot get this to release. There's obviously a lock in place that just doesn't want to release. In fact, I know there's 3 of them, because I have worked on these before and I've had to replace one of these with a 3D print, and this one just doesn't want to release. Now I don't want to damage it. This did pull off quite easily, it was quite loose, so that was great. So I'll just give it a clean, and yeah, don't have a lot of choice but to give it a basic clean and reassemble, and we'll do it for the second joystick as well. And there we are, all back together. Buttons doing hopefully what they're supposed to, and yeah, very creaky. More importantly, individually wrapped, so we're not going to get any more of this damage. I do have to say, where the cable has been, it's actually quite soft. So there's definitely been a reaction going on and damaging. Just a shame I couldn't have got them fully apart. And I know they come fully apart because, as I said, I've had a couple previously that I've worked on that were easy to get into by comparison to these. However, fingers crossed these work. So I'm going to use some deoxit on all the connectors. We'll plug the connectors in, make sure they're making good contact. We'll plug this into the back of the Thomson, and we'll just make sure that everything is nice and clean and ready to go when we're ready for testing. So before I go any further, there is something I spotted earlier. I did a little video for my Patreon and I spotted a spring from the keyboard. And that spring, looking back on the video, should be underneath that key, but that feels much different from the rest. So let me pop the keycap off. Hopefully I can do this without having to take it apart. And let's fit that spring. So there we go. It's in. It did fall to the side and I've had to pick it back out, but hey, these things happen, but it did save a lot more time than actually having to strip this apart. Right, let's get some power in and find out what happens next. So we're going to start off with number 10 from the pack. Not a football fan, but hey. And there we are, it's loaded, superb, everything's doing what it should. Really happy about that, but I'm not a football fan, so for me, I'm not going to be playing this. Let's go and find something I'm happier playing, and from the number of tapes I've got for the Thomson, I think everybody knows Arkanoid. So let me rewind this, reset, and let's load Arkanoid. Rather than you having to sit through and watch it all again, we'll maybe just skip to it loaded. So that's Arkanoid loaded. Let's see if we can get something to work. So, one player. Do we get a controller working? Okay, how do we bypass this? Other controller doesn't do anything either. Okay. Nope, left and right. And okay, so it does work. Sticky bat, yay! Okay. We like sticky bat. Don't know what that one did. Ah! Okay, got sticky bat again. There we go. So it's working. Joysticks are working, computer's working, tape deck's working, job's a good one. So thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next Retro Crazy or Retro Crazy mini bite.